Hi everyone, Stepan here. Welcome to another game. Let's go d4. I drew my last game, unfortunately. Let's play the Queen's Gambit again. It was the Queen's Gambit accepted. Okay, in this game we have the Slav. We'll see what my opponent does. I may play the Exchange Slav because I like playing the Exchange Slav. I may not though. I may play Knight f3. Okay, let's not play the Exchange Slav for entertainment purposes. Okay, the semi-Slav, my territory. So what do I want to do? I'm gonna go for an anti-Meran position with Queen c2. And yeah, now Bishop d6 is the main move, although there are other moves, but Bishop d6 is by far the most common. The idea behind Queen c2 is to play a useful move that delays Bishop d3 and avoids lines with dc, Bishop c, b5, a6, c5, so on. Black's main strategic goal in this position is to liberate the bishop. That can be done with c5 or e5. Okay, b5 is also playable. That's also fine. Sorry, b6. Yeah. This could be preparing Bishop a6 in some cases. So, since my opponent is sort of switching plans from and deviating from the main line, I'm gonna go b3 first. I normally develop my bishop and castle first, but in this case, I want to be playing against Bishop a6, and since they aren't quick enough to castle and go rook e8 and e5, I'm not afraid of my king staying on e1 a bit longer. Still, Bishop d6 and castles is the main move, but okay, now I am gonna go Bishop d3 because I'm not in time to wait for this to come. If my king is on e1, because rook e8 is gonna come quickly, or Queen e7. So what I want to do is I want to meet e5 with e4 or with taking on d5. That's the problem in this structure, that as soon as e5 is played, I take on d5 and get the b5 square for the knight and the c7 square for the knight. So you can see that the queen is actually well placed, targeting c7. So I'm just gonna castle here. If e5, I'm playing cd. If dc, then I'm happy I played b3. Okay, this changes things a bit because rook c8 is coming and then cd is gonna be slightly suboptimal. So let's go Bishop b2, and then on rook c8 I may play Queen e2. Oh, c5, interesting. Okay. This does not concern me because now e5 is almost unplayable. And I can switch my attention to the e file and play for e4. Is knight b5 interesting at all? Knight b5... Well, I actually think it is, because either my opponent blocks in the rook with Bishop b8, or the bishop retreats to e7, which gives me the opportunity to play knight e5, which cannot be taken because I play d5 and take the pawn on h7. So knight b5 could actually be interesting. I'm moving the same piece again, which I'm not a big fan of that, but also I should mention that dc, bc, bishop f3 doesn't concern me at all. I say that, and maybe there could be some problems with queen c7 later on. Still, let's go knight b5. I like this idea because if bishop b8, the rook isn't coming to c7. If bishop e7, I'm playing knight e5. And of course, if bishop c7, I just take. I desperately want to get rid of this bishop because this is my opponent's bad bishop for now. And the weakness behind c5 is giving away b5. Another thematic game in another thematic structure, the anti-Meran semi-Slav, is one of the most important structures you will get from the Nimzo, from the Queen's Indian, from the Bogo Indian in some cases. You'll get it from the Queen's Gambit Decline, the Tarash. Sometimes you can get it from the English opening or from the Reti. So this type of structure with this dynamic tension with c5, d5, c4, d4 is very important. One side could end up with hanging pawns, depending on who starts taking first. I never do that. I like playing with hanging pawns, so if my opponent goes dc, bc, cd, ed, then I have hanging pawns, but I like the structure. Of course, I could do the same thing and take on c5, take on d5. But my opponent isn't going to play ed5, because if they go ed5, the bishop is blocked. So I actually could have considered taking on d5 now. So cd, knight d, bishop d, e4 was definitely a plan. But I like my plan as well. It's really unclear where the bishop should go. And of course, you cannot defend the bishop because you'd have to go knight b8, which is dreadful. So you either move away from the most active diagonal and allow knight e5, or you block your rook, or you give away the bishop. So it's not an easy decision to make, I think. Also, now my bishop is more active. And I can actually go, if my opponent goes knight b8, I can go, sorry, bishop b8, I can go knight e5 anyway. Because I'm covering the e5 square twice. And again, the f6 knight must not move. Because I take on h7. This does not work. This does not work. Knight d6, cd, knight b7, queen c7, queen d. This does not work. Okay, knight d6, there's bishop f3 as well. So also I can just take on h7. Wow, okay, this is surprising. So knight d6. If bishop f3, I go bishop c4, I believe. Yes, I definitely go bishop c4. And if cd3, then I go knight b7. My opponent goes queen c7. I take on d3. My opponent takes on b7. Very complicated. Okay, so definitely knight d6 looks promising now. What about bishop h7? Bishop h7, knight h7, knight d6. Yeah, I don't feel like doing that. Okay, I'm taking on d6. I don't want to trade my h pawn for the c pawn. That doesn't seem like a good idea. This, seriously? Okay, I mean, I'm happy to see this. Seems like a good structure for me. My bishop is definitely better than one of the knights. Yeah, I like this. I mean, I have not expected this. I was expecting queen c7. I think I just have a better endgame now. This bishop has to be better than the d7 knight. It just has to be. Yeah, I mean, this seems like a weird decision to me. Not that it's losing or anything, but I would take white because my bishop on b2 is a monster. Yeah, I think queen c7 was kind of necessary. Also, if the knight on d7 moves, I have knight e5. Also, if my opponent doesn't challenge the c file, I have rook c7 later on. Okay, this threatens to win a pawn. So I'm guessing I should go a3. Because if my opponent plays knight b4... Yeah, okay, I'm... Wait, a3? No, yeah, a3 is fine. a3 is fine. I don't want to allow knight b4. There's just no need to do that. Do I go knight d4 now or do I take on c8 first? I don't really know. I'm playing knight d4 now. So knight d4, rook c2, knight c2, rook c8, knight b4, a5, knight d3. If rook c2, I just go rook c1. Yeah, this is okay. This is gonna be a long game. Oh, I don't have knight b4. What am I saying? I'm gonna have to go rook c1. Okay, that's still fine. Wow, my opponent did not play rook c8. That's strange. Okay, if I go rook d1, knight b3, I go e4 and I win. So on rook d1, knight b3 cannot be played. And I'm preparing for b4 while defending the d3 square. So I think rook d1 is good. Rook d1 prevents knight d3 and prevents knight b3. So rook d1, knight b3, e4 seems good. Rook d1, knight e4 doesn't do anything. Okay, I'm going rook d1. It seems good. What did I just miss? Did I miss something? Rook c8 does not work. I just make a queen. Are you serious? Wait a minute. ED, rook c2, d6. rook c8, d7, bishop e5, rook d8, bishop e5, loses. This has to be losing. Wait a minute. What? ed, rook c2, d6. ed, rook c2, d6, rook c8, d7, rook c8. Oh, there is knight c5 in the end. There is knight c5 in the end. ed, rook c2 is forced. d6, rook c8 seems forced. Unless knight c5 works, but I don't think it does. Okay, I'm definitely taking ed. I'm also looking at de, fe, rook check, king f7, rook d7 check. But my back rank is weak, so I cannot take that pawn. So let's have a look at d6. Unfortunately, there's knight c5 immediately. Oh no, there's no knight c5 immediately because I play d7. So d6, knight c5, d7, rook, knight d7, rook d7, rook c1 doesn't work, rook b2 hangs mate. So okay, d6 definitely. Knight c5 is losing. Rook c8 is forced. Okay, now I just have to prevent knight c5. So do I go bishop d4? That loses a bishop. Okay, d7, rook c8, bishop e5, knight c5, bishop c7 is winning. Is it? No, it's not. I cannot allow a blockade on c5 and on d7. So I must play d7 now. d7, rook d8. Bishop e5, knight c5, bishop c7, rook c7. He's losing. How it worked perfectly for my opponent. How did my opponent calculate this all so precisely? Okay, so I cannot move my pawn to d7 or I lose. That much is clear. So, I need to bring my king closer. I have a feeling that king f1 is better than everything else, so let's do that. My opponent's gonna go knight c5. Yeah, and then I'm busted. Oh no, maybe I'm not. Okay, I'm going king f1 for now. d7 doesn't work. Now I'm not hanging back rank checkmates, and I'm threatening bishop d4. So if my opponent doesn't play knight c5 now, I'm gonna go bishop d4, and the pawn will not be blockaded. I just couldn't put the pawn on d7 because I would lose the pawn. If the pawn is on d6, I'm not going to lose it. I don't know. I mean, I'm probably not worse. Or not much worse. But yeah, my enthusiasm when I thought that this was winning was premature. Everything works. Every single blockading idea works for my opponent. That's extremely annoying, but we have to live with that. Knight c5 saves the day. I still think I have very good chances, because if the knight reaches d7, or if the knight goes to c5, and d7, I'll have rook c1, rook c7. So this is by no means over. All three results are possible. And now my opponent has a problem. If knight c5, then rook c1. If rook d8, then bishop c3 and bishop b4. I wonder how my opponent calculated so quickly that e4 doesn't lose. I was sure that it was losing. My opponent must be much better than me. Maybe they just got lucky, but... reasonable. But now I'm preventing knight c5. So now I can go bishop d4. Yeah, but it won't be enough. Bishop d4 is not enough. My opponent takes and has a better endgame. So bishop c3. King f7 saves the position in that case. Also a5 is annoying. Yeah, f6 was probably the best move. Okay, still I'm going bishop c3. Of course the bishop cannot be taken because I just queen. And if my opponent plays knight c5, well, okay, now I'm just gonna go bishop here. Knight d7 is a good blockade, but I'm moving my king in. Okay, is a5 scary? How scary is a5? Seems very scary. I'm still moving my king in. I don't care about the f2 pawn. If my opponent checks me on c2, I go king d3, and on rook f2 I go rook c1 winning. Well, that's a way in for my king. It's a way in for his king as well. So king d3, king f7, king e4, king e6 could be a problem. Still, king d3 has to be done. I have to control the c file. Okay, congratulations. I find this very, very, very annoying. I don't think my opponent had made a single mistake. Yeah. Why is the engine already on? Yeah. I'm very upset. Very upset. I'm sorry if I don't talk a lot during this part. I'm trying to compose myself so that I don't start shouting. I'm actually going to cover the camera so that I can at least allow myself some facial expressions. Okay, let's see. DC4 is the best move. Okay, I mean, finding DC4 is beyond me. I'm going to be honest. It's absolutely beyond me. Knight D5 is the best move. Okay, CD4 is the best move. Knight C5 is the best move. Knight B3 is the best move. Okay. This is, yeah, and then I'm losing. My opponent made, yeah, this is, okay, I'm, yeah.